Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Witt, and I'm joined by Jonathan Fordugba for our usual weekly edition here. Jonathan, it's good to see you as always, my friend, or certainly hear from you anyway. What did you make of things in the last week?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Thank you, and good to see you. I'm quite happy at the moment because I'm going to go straight into it on the Patreon. Patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. We've absolutely smashed it this week, haven't we? We've had 5 out of 6 predictions that came off. So if anyone enjoys that show, or if you're a subscriber and you like the show, we've predicted quite a lot of games this week that have come off, and just in general, it feels like we've got quite a good sort of reading of the league at this moment in time, doesn't it? I think we're kind of, our perception and our insight is quite good. Leads me on to the Malmö of the discussion because we talked about it off camera, didn't we, a few times, how and even on the podcast we've talked about it with Milojevic. I've said on the show in the past that I think it might end badly, and obviously that's the big news of the week, isn't it? So it just feels to me like we're kind of in a good sort of rhythm at the moment on the podcast, and hopefully you as a listener and you yourself, Steve, hopefully you're also feeling that way, because I feel like we're in good form at the moment.
We certainly are in very good form. It was a very good Patreon weekend preview. Also, there was a player profile, Johan Hover, that I did on Friday for the patrons, and there'll be some more of those coming up very soon indeed. So thanks very much for anyone who supported us on there throughout the whole year. By the way, I really appreciate it. So going to go straight into this Malmö situation. There's been a managerial sacking here. You're going to tell us all about that. But there's actually been a question from Luis de la Meda. Thank you very much indeed for your support of the podcast, Luis. At the time of this question, Malmö has yet to appoint their new manager in what has been a rather inconsistent season for them. Based on what you've been following around Europe, or bold suggestions, could you suggest a short list of 3 names they should consider and why? But firstly, just go into this sacking, how it came about, because it was on the back of a shocking European being knocked out of Europe.
I've not actually seen that question. Is that on Twitter?
Yep, that is on Twitter.
I'll have to have a little look. I've missed it. But yeah, no, the big news, of course, as I say, Malmö have released their manager, Milos Milojevic, from his duties, as you've just mentioned there. It's all gone pear-shaped. Steve, I'm still waiting for your clip maybe on what I said about him several times on this podcast in the past few months. It's just, I don't like to get on anyone's back for any reason, but it's just had a bit of an off feel to it, I think, from I wouldn't say day one, but from fairly early on. I think Malmö's form hasn't been great. Problem in football is obviously, who do you blame for that? Is it the manager? Is it the club in general? But at the end of the day, as we know in football, oftentimes the manager gets the stick for it. So, I'm not saying it's entirely Milojevic's fault or whatever, but at the end of the day, kind of when the results aren't going well, it's the manager who falls on his sword. If you look at it, they've had some tough results, even from sort of day 2. I think against Elfsborg, they drew at Värnamo early on. They had 3 straight defeats recently in May. And from then, even though in the league they've won 5 out of 6 games, they lost at GIF Sundsvall, a bit of a nightmare there. And just in general, it's not felt right. Something's just not been quite right about them. And of course, it all went horribly wrong last week when they played Zalgiris in the Conference League in the Champions League qualifier, and they lost 2-0 at home. Now, I think I'm right in saying it was 9-1 for Zalgiris to win this match, and I'm actually kicking myself because I've said, any listeners on this podcast this season, I've been saying repeatedly, I don't think they will get in the Champions League, and I think they'll go out early. I thought even in the previous round against, I think it was Viking, that they might suffer. They nearly got knocked out then, and even against 10 men, they struggled at home. And they just sort of scraped through. Of course, Zalgiris, anyone would expect them to beat Zalgiris, but they've gone out, and it didn't surprise me at all. A goal from Oyewusi and Renan made it 2-0 at home and 3-0 on aggregate, which is just shocking. After that game, a lot of supporters on social media and things like that were telling Malmö, tweeting Malmö and saying, get rid of your manager, get rid of the manager as soon as possible. And pretty much a few days later, they did. So he's been relieved of his duties. Andreas Georgsen, who's sort of the sporting director, formerly of Arsenal, by the way, he used to work at Arsenal. He's back at the club now, and he will take over temporary charge. And in terms of the timing of it, of course, Malmö haven't been having a great season, but they've made quite a lot of they've made a lot of transfer business in the last few weeks, as we mentioned on last week's show, and they're only 3 points off the title. So probably from their point of view, maybe quite a good time to make a move if they're going to make a move, because they're still well within it. They're still in Europe, of course. They've got a game this week now, but they won't be in, obviously, the Champions League. So maybe from their point of view, this was probably the time to pull the trigger. And also they had no game this weekend just passed as well, so they had a little rest. And maybe from that point of view, it's best for all parties that they move on.
What sort of manager do they need, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's rumours that Henrik Rydström they might go for him again from Kalmar. I've written a Wisecout blog about Rydström, and I've described him as one of the best managers in Sweden for his tactical, the way he builds sort of possession-based game. He's done really exciting things with Kalmar over the last year or so. Will they go in for him again? There's a school of thought that maybe at the moment it's not the right time. He'd want a full pre-season, and he wouldn't want to go in mid-season because he likes to implement his game style. You know, he's got a very sort of clear identity in terms of how he wants to play football, very possession-based. So that might not be the one for now. There was a rumor about Rickard Norling even at one point. Who suits them? I mean, it's hard to say really. Malmö tend to have good options because they're such a big club for in Scandinavia in general. I mean, I even saw some Malmö fans talking about Kjetil Knutsen and, you know, sort of saying we're bigger than Glimt, so why don't we go and take their manager? That's kind of a bit of a debate as well from some Malmö fans. And I kind of get the rationale. You know, they've got a way bigger budget than Glimt, I imagine. And it would be a case of would Knutsen maybe want to go there? But, you know, in terms of the insight from the Malmö fans, what they're thinking, they want the top cream of the cream. They want the best of the best. You know, they've just had Jondal Thomason. So he got a win, by the way, Steve, Blackburn first game. So your prediction that he'll get sacked, let's see how that goes. But
I saw that. I did see that. It made me laugh.
He started well. So, but yeah, the point I'm making is that they have options. You know, Thomason came from obviously Danish and Dutch football. So Malmö is a big job. It's just a case of who will want to take them mid-season. The one rumor that's going around, actually, Steve, is about Per-Mattis Hogmo from Häcken. Now, there's little reports swirling around I've seen in the last day or so saying that they might approach him and that he has a release clause in his contract at Häcken. Now, that would send shockwaves through the title race, to be honest, because not only would that derail Häcken, who are second at this moment in time, 1 point off the top. Of course, that might be to Malmö's advantage and help them in the league. He's done a fantastic job there at Häcken, making them, you know, they were pretty much towards the bottom of the table when he joined. And he's taken them now to completely revitalize the team. And this season, they're now challenging. So he's an experienced manager. Of course, he's been around the block in Scandinavia. Maybe he'd fancy it. You know, it's a in terms of infrastructure, it's a bigger club than Häcken. So I don't really have an answer for you at this moment in time, but those are just one or two of the names floating around.
Yeah, and Flying Dutchman on Twitter also asked a question: was Milojevic the right appointment to begin with, considering the success that Jondal Thomason had? He also goes on to ask, was Häcken Elfsborg the most exciting game in Allsvenskan this year? I'm sure we'll be talking about that in a minute. But finally, on Milojevic, I know he actually won a trophy, in fairness, the Swedish Cup, but they got that appointment wrong, really, haven't they?
Well, that's talking in hindsight. I think it's, you know, you can't, I mean, in hindsight, yes, but you can't predict that it's going to go wrong, can you? I think I said it in the season preview show that I predicted them to win the title, but my feeling was with Milojevic, it could go either way. He has got, unfortunately, a bit of a track record at his clubs of kind of ending badly and falling out with people. It ended really badly with him at Hammsrby, of course, when he was found to go and interview for Rosenborg job. I think in the other previous clubs as well, he's been at, I think in Serbia as well, and places like that. It's kind of ended under a bit of a cloud, let's say. It was always going to be tough taking over from Thomason, because as I've said, I think Thomason did a brilliant job at Malmö. Let's not forget Uwe Rosler had, you know, if you compare Rosler with Milojevic, you know, Milojevic was won a trophy at least, I suppose, and kind of did make a good fist of it and hasn't had much time, 16 games plus Europe. It's not a huge amount of time to implement any kind of style. So you can kind of argue to a certain extent is that, you know, did he deserve more time? At the same time, though, I think there were warning signs early on in the season, like I said, you know, the against Värnamo, against GIF Sundsvall, the 3 defeats in a row. I think also this whole muscle injury thing, MFF, you know, muscle injury FF, the kind of just a lot of injuries, and there were rumours and reports maybe that he'd been overworking players in pre-season and things like that. And Malmö, there's a lot of big players, big egos at the club. It's probably the club in Sweden with the most kind of attitude, if you know what I mean, in terms of like they want the best, and their players might speak out if they're not getting the best. I think you don't maybe get that at some other clubs in Sweden, but Malmö, they have a big mentality of a club, you know what I mean, and even though they're only 3 points off it, it's kind of not acceptable how the season's gone so far. They've only scored 22 goals in 16 games, which is poor. So I mean, in hindsight, yes, it obviously wasn't the right decision because they've all fallen out and he's left. But at the same time, he'd probably argue he won a trophy and needed more time. And of course, they've just made some signings. So, maybe the squad wasn't good enough as well. It's not only the manager, but yeah, all in all, it's just kind of ended with a bit of a sour taste. And I never felt confident in Europe that they'd go far. And I just think that it has had a bit of a stench about it from day one. That kind of, was it exactly the right move? So I'm not surprised at all, but it's a sad ending. And let's see how Georgsson does, because they've still got obviously a European game this week to focus on.
Yeah, kind of turbulent times at Malmö there with the managerial, but it was actually quite a good week for them on the field, wasn't it? Even though they weren't in action, because rivals for the title of both slipped up, Hammsrby and Häcken. We've got to start with this Häcken match, and I've got to say, Jonathan, I don't think I've ever won a plus 0.25 Asian handicap bet or half won one with a 4-4 draw ever in my life. I can't ever remember being involved in a 4-4 draw very often in my life. But this was absolutely batshit mental football, wasn't it? Elfsborg 4, Häcken 4. I mean, we haven't got that long, but break this one down for us.
Yeah, I mean, where do we go? Right.
Great defending.
No, not great defending. Obviously, this was my prediction on the weekend preview show. I said that I thought Häcken would get something from this game, and you kindly guided me to the Asian handicaps. So it was a team effort there on that one. Well done, mate. In terms of Flying Dutchman's question at Januzaj Stan, was it the most exciting game in Allsvenskan all year? I think it was the most active game. It was the most crazy game in terms of like, I was live tweeting this on Twitter, and it was like you'd barely finish your tweet before something else had happened. It was like it was so frantic, it was impossible to get any kind of composure, if you know what I mean. But to me, good games are high quality games, and I actually felt this was, I wouldn't say a poor quality game, but I thought there was so many mistakes and just bad like defending that I can't call it a quality game, if that makes sense. I didn't come out of it feeling like, oh, what a game I've seen. I came out of it feeling like it's a bit shambolic at times. That word shambolic is what I wrote down in the first 15 minutes to describe Häcken's defending. First 15, I mean, from a tactical point of view, the wingers were 10 yards too high. Blair Turger and Ali Youssef, that left so much space in midfield. Obviously, Gustav Berggren, he's left now. He's been sold, I think, to Czech Republic. I think you'll confirm that for me, Steve. The name's just lost me. But Aman Romeo came in. Now he's a new signing that we talked about in pre-season, but he's not played many games in Allsvenskan. I thought the midfield was just way off it in the first half. They were really slow. They weren't alert at all. So this meant that Elfsborg had so much space in central midfield areas, Steve, to build from. It was like you got the ball and you felt like you were on planet Mars or something. The amount of wide open space you could see your player in to run into. And so, they scored obviously first early. Then Holman with one of his, I think it was his debut, in fact, back in Elfsborg anyway. He gave the ball away for 1-1. It was a lapse in concentration. There, Elfsborg trying to build from the back, and they did it really, really badly. Then Gudjonsson clipped in a lovely ball for Alm to make it 2-1. Gudjonsson had a good game, by the way. I had Gudjonsson's son. He was very lively, goal and assist. It was just mad, and obviously the game was kind of marked by the two halves. The beginning of the first half was crazy, and then the beginning of the second half was crazy. We've got to also bear in mind Yermayev. He's already outscored. I think he's already scored as many as the top goal scorer in the entire of last season. Now, I think he got his 18th goal of the season, banged a hat trick. He's just looking razor sharp at this moment in time. He's been absolutely brilliant. So there was so much going on in this game, Steve, that it was really hard to sort of. You couldn't take your eye off it really. But yeah, I didn't think it was a huge high quality. It also ended under a bit of a cloud, which I have to mention that I think a supporter or someone collapsed at the end of the game. So they actually ended the game without it really ending. There was a long break in the sort of 93rd, 4th minute. And it's one of those harrowing scenes. Everyone was running. Everyone was running towards the touchline, and you were wondering what's going on. And the managers came onto the pitch, and it was like you didn't really know what was happening. It was a bit worrying, to be honest. So it kind of ended in a bit of a down way as well, I think. Hopefully the fan or whoever it was is okay, but it was just so many things going on. It was hard to sort of take your eye off it.
I couldn't believe when I saw the highlights of this game, the defensive errors and mistakes, which was a shambles. And there's absolutely no way Häcken can win this title if they defend like that. Not a prayer, Jonathan, in my opinion. Only 4 teams in the league have conceded more goals than Häcken. 25 goals conceded in 16 games. They score a lot of goals, which is a good thing. But where do you see them finishing from this point in time? Because I've got to be honest, just based on how I see teams, for me, they'll be down in 5th.
Well, I think I came out of this game feeling that they won't win the title. Elfsborg, like I say, my prediction was they'll get something, but to be honest, I actually felt a little bit lucky at the end of the game that they got something. And I think Häcken fans probably might feel the same way. They have times where they blitz teams. They have times where they look so good. And then they just have times where they just fall apart. I mean, the defending it wasn't really the defense's fault. It was more the midfield, the openness. If you've got that much space to play into, you're just asking for trouble. It was ridiculous. Other bad news for Häcken is that Ali Yusuf was out for the season. Now, if you remember last week, Steve, I mentioned when we talked about the debrief about their game last week, I actually mentioned him specifically and said he looked really lively when he came off the bench against Djurgården. He started this game, earned his start, and then he got injured, and he's out for the season, apparently they've announced tonight, which is really sad because I really like Yusuf. I think he's going to be a really good player, and he was just sort of starting to heat up, if that makes sense. He looked like he was just starting to, get on form and earn his place in the team again. So I felt a bit sorry for him there as well. Will they win the title? I don't think so, if I'm being honest. They've got a decent run, to be fair, coming from now. So can they just continue to blow teams away? And, Yeremyev has nearly double the next top goal scorer in the league. Now, I know he takes penalties, but that's just he is on fire at the moment. It's like, I think they need to call him CR7 Yeremyev or something like that. You know what I mean? He's just on fire. Every single chance he's burying it. And when you've got, at this moment in time, the best striker in the league banging goals in for fun, you can't write a team out, but the defensive shape is poor. And I think another thing, Johan Hammer is apparently linked with teams abroad as well. So he's one of their defenders, and obviously they've sold Berggren now. You didn't tell me the team, but it's Rakov Chestochova. He's been a really solid midfielder for them, the 24-year-old. He's played over 200 games for them. I remember him when I was in Sweden. He was kind of young then and sort of coming into the team. But, he's been there for a long time now, become a stalwart. And I think they missed him in this game, in fact. I thought that just the midfield balance was all off. So they're going to have to work on that midfield shape. From Elfsborg's point of view, disappointing again, really, in terms of how they defended. At times going forward, they looked phenomenal. Like I say, Gudjonsson was really good. Alm at times. Ondrejka came on and scored a great goal. I think Michael Baidu is someone I mentioned in pre-season and on a preview show as well on Patreon. I think he's someone to keep an eye on. He did quite well here, got an assist and looked quite lively. But, Elfsborg are just sort of still in 9th and not really getting the job done. Defensively, they're just so open. They do have Nicholas Holt and Simon Holman, but like I said, Holman made a mistake for the goal, and it's such a bad mistake if you watch the highlights. But, Häcken now, if they'd won that game, they'd have gone top of the table. They're now 1 point behind Djurgården with 14 games left, 16 games played. They are the top scorers in the league, but they've conceded more goals than Helsingborg, who are second from bottom. So that really tells you everything you need to know about this Häcken team.
Yeah, a 4-4 draw, incredible game of football. And to be fair, not actually a shock result because Elfsborg, believe it or not, kicked off nearly even money favourites in this game. So you could say it was a shock that Elfsborg didn't win it, according to the odds anyway. But I tell you where there was a really big shock, and that was in Stockholm. Hammsrby were 1-3 favourites to beat Värnamo, and they lost 2-1. This match here, I actually kind of felt sorry for anyone who had backed under 2.5 goals in this game, Jonathan, because it was 0-0 with 13 minutes left. And it's ended up at 2-1. So Marcus Antonsson with a brace of goals, including a last-minute winner, really good finish, actually. But this is a really bad result for Hammsrby, isn't it? Because everyone expected him to get the 3 points fairly comfortably against Varnamo. But what a timely result for Varnamo. We had their assistant manager on the podcast last week that you did a great interview with, David Cellini, and he will be absolutely delighted with this result, won't he?
Yeah, and I loved Luis de Almeida's comment. I think going back to Luis again, you're getting some shout outs on this show this week, Luis. I thought that I really enjoyed his comment saying this sort of tactical analysis of the game. He said that, it was great to see Varnamo take such a hard-fought victory. They showed a lot of spirit and hard work that David Cellini shared with us in the last episode. While Elfsborg, I expected more from them this year. And he also commented when I was sort of live tweeting the game, and he said something about how, the hard work and the non-negotiable desire to play competitively against anyone is what stands out for Varnamo. So thanks, Louise. It's good to know people are listening, and I hope you enjoyed that interview with David Cellini, because I felt he broke it all down perfectly. And if you haven't listened to that interview, I really recommend it, especially if you like the coaching side of football, if you like the tactical side of it, because he really breaks down a lot of things. We talked about evolutions of tactics, where football's going. It was a really fascinating discussion, and I came out of it thinking to myself, Varnamo are going to be fine this season. I don't think they're going down. Hammsrby were massive favourites for this game. I think I saw at one point Varnamo 13-1 to win the match, and yet they won the match. And obviously they had to deal with the what happened in the game in terms of the equaliser from Basara, 89th minute penalty. You're thinking that Hammsrby are going to come in and last few minutes really dominate them. And the thing is, this game was on at the same time as Elfsborg Hacken, Steve. So it was like I didn't know where to look at one point. It's just absolutely mad, the ending to this game and that the other game. Antonsen with 2 more goals. He's now, I think, the second top scorer in the league. He's been phenomenal, and his second goal was just quality, a quality counter attack. But in fact, both goals were quality, just clinical finishing. But the second goal was unbelievable. Just walloped it top quarter, walloped it into the net on a counter attack. Just sweet connection with a cross, absolutely perfect. Smashes it in to win the game in the 90th minute. Nahir Basara actually came out afterwards and said it's difficult to play against teams who sit back with every single player in the penalty area. A little bit salty. On Hammsby's part, I saw some comments from AIK fans who were very happy about this game, saying that Robin Teehee, or Agent Teehee as they're calling him at the moment, got a win for Varnamo against Hammsby, of course. And it's their second win against Hammsby, don't forget, because they've done a double over them this season, which is absolutely unbelievable if you listen to the interview and you listen to the budget at Varnamo. They've got 2 or 3 tops full-time staff compared to these huge organizations like Hammsby and Malmö. So for them to be doing the double over a team like Hammsby is just absolutely just unbelievable, and it's fully deserved, because tactically they're a very, very intelligent, smart team. And although I was surprised by the result, I'm not surprised having spoken to David Cellini, because there's good things going on at Varnamo.
Hammsby had an expected goals of 2.68 in this game. Varnamo just 1.02. So they've actually had quite a bit of luck here in the XG terms, although they've been rather unlucky. Those who listen,
but a penalty is going to increase their XG by how much?
0.76.
Yeah,
so it's still quite convincing. But yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a win for them. You've got to give them a lot of credit. What sort of damage does this do for Hammsby's title challenge? Because they've really let slip a fantastic opportunity there.
Yeah, it's like you just said, Steve. I think you said it was a good weekend for Malmö, and it's a good weekend for AIK and Djurgården as well, who didn't play. At the end of the day, if you look at the table now, without those games in hand, it's now kind of like you're really looking at AIK, Malmö, and Djurgården now with 3 points. Obviously, Malmö are 3 points behind Djurgården, who are top, and AIK are 2 points behind Djurgården, who are top. You're now looking at those teams and thinking, crack on. I think Hammsby, I said it on last week's show, I just think they've missed too many opportunities. There was no GAs in this game because obviously he's maybe in the middle of a transfer, and they brought in David Concha, they brought in a few other players as well, new players. Berisha came on late in the game to try and maybe get a winner. But and by the way, the penalty was really soft. I don't actually think it was a penalty. So they kind of had a little bit of a lifeline even then, and then went and just gave it away straight away. So I just feel that they're making too many errors, Hammsby. And if you actually look at it, I haven't looked at the XG this week in terms of in the league how they're doing, but they've scored 31 goals and they've conceded 13. That's a sort of team that you'd think to yourself they should be right up there. But there's just too many games not going their way that are swinging away from them. Like Varnamo doing the double over you, things like that. Just little games where you feel like they should be doing slightly better, and you don't get too many more opportunities. Malmö and AIK and Djurgården haven't been amazing this season, and I think the first 5 games of the season Hammsrby looked like the best team in the league, but since then they've only won 4 games I think in the last 11 I think in the league. Am I right in saying?
Yeah, they started like a train, didn't they?
Yeah,
but they have dropped points recently.
Yeah, they've dropped a lot of points. That's a lot of points to drop. So it's a similar thing with Häcken. You don't get too many opportunities to sort of crack on. The next game is Kristiansund at home. They should win that. But they've got to go to AIK. They've got Djurgården coming up in September. They've got Norrköping away, Elfsborg away, but not too many other sort of big games. I know there's one game I think to be rescheduled, but I just think that they are letting a few things slip when they should really be hammering home some of these teams. But I can't let that take away anything from Varnamo, because I think Varnamo are a very, very good team. And let's be fair, Steve, they've done this to other teams. They should have got something from the AIK game last week, but for some comedy errors, they got something from Malmö as well. Varnamo are a very good team and tactically up there with some of the best, I think, in terms of the manager.
Yeah, well done to Varnamo for an excellent result there. Now we're going to move to Monday evening's game between IFK Göteborg and Norrköping, because we're going to talk about both teams now. Now, no one's really been on about IFK too much recently, but they have actually won 5 of the last 7 games, Jonathan. They're silently moving up the table to as high as 6th now. Maybe even a dark horse for a medal spot, who knows? But take us through this game. And I know IFK have been quite impressed. You've been impressed with them recently, certainly at home. Yeah,
well, I'll start by pouring cold water on that. They're not going to win the medal. They're not going to finish top 3. I can pretty much guarantee that. Especially after you've been calling Mickey Stara, you're not a fan of Stara. I don't think that will happen. But what I will say about IFK is they, like you say, they're going under the radar and they're looking very good. I know part of this is because they've just played Norrköping twice, and Norrköping, I'd say, in terms of form, they're one of the worst teams in the league at this moment in time. They're having a horrendous time of it. So you've got that caveat, I suppose. But at the same time, I thought IFK looked really good this evening. I really did. Hussein Carneal is an 18-year-old that we talked about, Steve. He might be 19 now, is he? But anyway, he's very young. No, he's still 18. Am I right? Yeah, no, he's 19. Sorry, he's 19. But he's someone that I picked out on the season preview show, didn't I? As a 10 to watch.
It was a nice goal, wasn't it?
Afghan immigrant who fled to Sweden. Obviously, that it's always interesting, the backstories of these players. Born in Kabul, moved to Sweden. Obviously, Sweden very welcoming in previous years of refugees, and they do so much humanitarian work. Sweden, I think, as a country. Other European nations maybe don't do as much, but Sweden obviously very caring in that sense. He's gone to IFK Göteborg. He's been able to sort of work on his skill as a young boy in their academy, and he's come through now, and he's looking really good, Steve. I think behind the scenes there's a lot of talk about him. I think there's a lot of excitement about him, and I had him on the 10 to watch. If you go on Patreon and go back, you'll see, you can listen to our 10 to watch and get all the names there. Some of them already got transfers this year, but Carneal's on there, and he's looking quality. I think him, Kevin Jakob and Marcus Berg were very good, and also defensively. I thought Jallo was brilliant tonight as a fullback. I think it won't be long before he maybe gets a move, because I think he is looking good. And they secured a 2-0 win. Goals from Jakob and Carneal. This is Carneal's first ever goal in Allsvenskan, and like you said, Steve, the way he took it with aplomb. I mean, what a hit that was for someone who's only 19. And he's sort of an attacking midfielder, good technique, brave on the ball, confident. Someone who likes to run at defenders. He's not afraid to sort of take people on. I think he's got a big future, actually, Carneal. And Jallo as well, like I said, a real outlet. He put the cross in for the first goal. Bit of a deflection, but Jakob finished it brilliantly with a header. I thought IFK pressed the midfield really well in this game, and I thought Stara, although sometimes we've been a bit critical of him, I thought the team makeup looked really strong. Good in transitions. He tactically had them. They pounced on Norrköping in midfield, and sort of when that defense to attacking transition came up, when they dispossessed Norrköping, they had the likes of Carneal and Jakob to run at defenders, Norlin as well. and then Berg to sort of get on the end of chances. Berg smashed the post at one point. And I just thought they were comfortable in this game. I did predict it on the weekend show as well on Patreon. But yeah, they got into that 2-0 lead. Norrköping kind of came back into it, but I have to say as well, massive shout has to go to the goalkeeper as well for IFK Göteborg, because he made 2 brilliant saves in this game as well. Firstly, just early in the second half, he made an incredible save low to his right and just dived and cleared it away, which was a brilliant save from close range. And then he made a really, really good save, I think 60th minute from Niemann, a really good header that he kept out. And, if one of those goes in, it's 2-1 and, it could be a different game. I think Warner Han, who's new, obviously joined this season, I think he's been a really good signing, actually, the goalkeeper. And he kind of kept the clean sheet for them, really, with those 2 brilliant saves. So, yeah, it's going well for IFK Göteborg at this moment in time. Like I say, they've got bigger tests to come. And I think maybe they've had a bit of fortune in terms of who they've played. If you look at their sort of last, 4 or 5 games, beat Degerfors, beat Norrköping twice, drew with Mjällby at home, and obviously lost to Hammsrby 3-0. So it is kind of, what's their actual level. But just for the moment in time, with 5 wins in their last 7, that's impressive.
Yeah, fair to say he has a safe pair of hands, doesn't he? He had a really good game in the reverse fixture as well, I think.
He's a very good goalkeeper, by the way.
They won 2.
He's above Allsvenskan level. I think
he
was in the Netherlands before that.
I could see him being in your team in the season, Jonathan.
He's been really, in terms of goalkeepers, he's been up there.
I think he's whenever I've seen him, and yeah, actually, IFK have impressed me a bit recently as well. Stara, one thing I like about Stara, he's so passionate about the club. It seems he really loves it when they score a goal. Really gives it his all in that way. So fair play to them for now. Bad news though for Norrköping. I saw you tweeting something that you're a bit worried they might even get sucked into a relegation battle if they're not careful, because they need to sort their managerial situation out. Really, really poor from them.
Yeah, they've just been shambolic. And yeah, I think I tweeted it during this match. I'm worried about them a little bit, actually. I think if they don't buck their ideas up, they could be an outside candidate to be relegated, Steve. I mean, I know I predicted them this season, I think 10th. And a lot of people were surprised at that. That raised a lot of eyebrows. A lot of people had them maybe mid-table or upper mid-table. But they're actually surpassing even what I thought they'd do this season. I mean, if you look at it, they've not won a game since May. They beat, obviously, GIF Sundsvall 5-1 in May, but since then they've lost 5 games, drawn 3. They've sacked their manager, of course. Norling's gone. Lost 3 in a row now, back to back against IFK and then to Malmö. Drew at Degerfors, drew at Mjällby. They need to buck their ideas up. They've got Degerfors at home next, and that's a big game, actually. I think that's a big game. Degerfors have improved a lot in the last few weeks. They beat Kalmar, and I was surprised that they did, actually. But they've made a few signings that have kind of turned their fortunes around a bit. So I don't think they're as much of a lock to go down now as I thought before. I said earlier in the season when they lost, I think by 6 against Elfsborg, I said I think they're the worst team in the league. These signings they've made, Lagerbilke, 1 or 2 others as well, they've just come in and sort of given them a little bit of an impetus. And I think that they might pick up a bit of form now. They're not, obviously that win takes them off the top bottom of the league. They're up to 14th now. They're 5 points off Norrköping. If they could beat Norrköping away from home, that would suck them really into it, Norrköping. So I think Norrköping will be fine, but they need to get their new manager sorted out quickly because they're just getting sucked into it now in 12th. And Värnamo are there, and I think Värnamo are picking up, points. I don't think Värnamo can be underestimated, so I don't think Norrköping can say safely they'd finish above Värnamo. Then you're looking at maybe GIF Sundsvall and Helsingborg and one other team. So Norrköping need to sort of just keep an eye on what's going on. We had a question as well from at Scooby Man, Scooby on Twitter, who's a follower of ours, loyal supporter of the podcast, which we appreciate. Thank you, Scooby Man. He says, can Helsingborg survive the relegation battle? And I do think they can. They didn't play this weekend because of the fixtures. There was a reduced slate, but they did get an important win the week before that against GIF Sundsvall 1-0. Now they go to Häcken in their next game, which is I think it's a difficult one for them. We'll see how that one goes. But then after that, they've got Sirius at home, Sundsvall away, Mjällby at home, and then Värnamo away. Now for Helsingborg, those are some big games. And I think the key, Steve, is going to be, can they keep Armin Djidjevic? Because he got the winner against Sundsvall Obviously, he left to go to Russia, and he's back again. Before he left, I was raving about him, wasn't I? I think I said at one point he's a bit like Samir Nasri, like a young Samir Nasri. He reminded me of a little bit the way he passes and the way he gets in between lines and things like that. I remember Samir Nasri at Marseille. He used to be so good at that sort of thing, getting in between the lines, picking it up in pockets, linking play, and then getting on the end of chances. There's a lot of rumours that Gijovic will move to Troyes in Ligue 1, your territory, Steve. I know you love that league, and I do as well. But if that goes through, then that's a big blow for them. But they've made a few signings. The new management team sort of seems to be gradually improving results, of course. I mean, it's just slowly. They've got a point at Varberg as well. But I don't think they're out of it. No, I don't think they're out of it, to answer that question from Matt Scooby, man. So I think they can survive. And that just means, that means there's one other spot available. Now, that's why I say Norrköping have to be careful, because if they don't back up their ideas, Helsingborg and Degerfors, I think their results could improve in the next few weeks.
They also lost Ravi Suka to Zulte Waregem in Belgium. I actually had him in my fantasy team for 1 week. Got me 7 nice points. Now he's on his bike. So I don't know how important he was to the club. Former Nantes, come through the Nantes Academy, I do believe, back in the day. So, but yeah, they're probably going to they'll give it their all. It's still up for grabs there down at the bottom of the table for sure. We're going to finish off by talking about a few transfers. Now, the window in Sweden is close to closing. I think it's only about 10 days away. So teams really need to start getting any business done that they need to get done.
Yeah, I think by the time we do the next episode, maybe the window might be shut. So just to maybe sort of recap, we talked about it on last week's show, so I won't go into too much detail, but a couple of transfers, maybe Simon Olsen from Elfsborg looks to be moving to the Netherlands, Heerenveen. He's been a really important player for me. He's a bit like what you said about Tsuka, Steve. I brought him in my fantasy team. He got suspended and then he's been sold. So a bit of a nightmare transfer for that one, me. But yeah, I think Elfsborg are looking to make about £1 million from him. Maybe they're looking for around 1.5 million pounds, maybe plus bonuses, which would be good money for them. He's been a really, really good player for them for many, many years. He's still only 24. So that's a bit of a blow for Elfsborg, I think. But the money, maybe they can reinvest it, and they have got Baidu. They also have a few other midfielders that Elfsborg got quite a big squad actually in terms of options. So maybe someone internally will come in and replace him. You just mentioned Etsuka, who's gone to Belgium. I think that's a good move. I mean, I think he stood out this season. He always had the potential in Sweden, and I think this season he's sort of shown it a bit more consistently. So it's bad news for you, I guess. On the fantasy front there. There's a few others. Obviously, we talked about Berisha. He made an interesting comment actually saying that Norway has a lot to learn about atmospheres and crowd atmospheres, because he praised the Hammsrby crowd. So that's quite an interesting one in terms of taking shots maybe at the atmosphere in Norway. I think you'll tell me about that one. We're still waiting for Mahana Diaz. The move hasn't gone through yet. We don't know what's going on there. AIK have sold Bojan Radulovic, formerly of Brighton. He's gone to HJK Helsinki. So maybe they're freeing up a bit of room for some late business, I think, AIK, because they haven't been that active, as we talked about on the transfer show last week. And then, yeah, finally, also I've mentioned Berggren, and there's one or two others, but there's not been a huge amount of transfer. So I'd say if you haven't listened to the transfer show from last week, then maybe go back and listen to that, because we did cover a lot of them. The only other one I'd probably mention, I mentioned Isaac Janssen on the last show. The only one I want to mention, maybe in terms of rumours, it looks like Basel of are they Switzerland? Yeah, Switzerland are looking to maybe try and sign Isaac Heen of Djurgården, the really good centre back at Diff. So that could be a big one. I think he will get a big move eventually. He's a very good defender. And then just on the subject of Norrköping, Steve, it's looking like Linus Valkvist might leave. Now they've already just lost another player who just came back recently, whose name completely escapes me now, so I won't mention him. But it looks like Valkvist is maybe going to Pogoń Szczecin. So
where's that?
In Poland.
Oh,
and he's another one who sort of came back and left again. So I'm a little bit worried about Norrköping in general. Yeah, it looks like they're going to be losing players, but yeah, there's not much time left in the window now, so teams need to do a bit of business. And yeah, I think we will see a lot. I think we'll see more business getting done in the next few weeks.
Yes. Okay. Well, that will do for the Swedish section of this episode. Join us after the break. We're going to be talking about Eliteserien and also talking about European qualifiers. So join us after the break.
By the way, before we go on break, that player was Dagestal, Philip Dagestal. So yeah, he's left.
There you go.
Welcome to part 2 of this week's episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Faduba, and as ever, I'm joined by Steve Wiss. We're back we had a little refreshment, half-time change ends. Steve, can't start anywhere else but this Glimt game. I mean, 8-0. You did speak last week about the Linfield sort of defensive rigidity, let's put it that way, and you weren't very happy about it. I mean, they've taken a big spank on the arse in this one, haven't they? In terms of the result. I mean, if they managed to park the bus in the last game, it sounds like, I don't know, a tractor's gone through the bus and just poured right through it, hasn't it? I mean, what has gone on here? How have they capitulated so badly, and what have Glimt done to turn this game around? What a result!
Well, let's not forget Glimt are like 1 to 10 favourites to win this second leg. So it's not the biggest of shocks that they've won comfortably, but obviously, after the first leg, I think Glimt kind of looked at themselves and said, we've got a problem against these sort of sides this season. We need to sort it out. And they sorted it out by beating Jörg 5-0. And this was a similar sort of display, Jonathan, and they've actually backed it with a good win at Allsvenskan as well. But it seems like just something, I think it definitely irks them in Northern Ireland that night. And it was like, right, we're not having this happen to us again. And it was more like the relentless nature of Bodø Glimt of, say, a year or two ago, where it was impossible for Linfield to deal with them. And you can't really have a go at Linfield because they were just out of their depth when Glimt are playing that well. And, it makes you wonder how on earth they actually did manage to get that first leg result, really. But, they were just simply unstoppable. Everyone was bang on the money. And there was a couple of really good goals for Bodø Glimt in this game. And, the match was done by pretty much, 35, 40 minutes, I think.
You can't have a go at Linfield, says Meatman Soccer, who spent about 4 minutes of last week's episode having a go at Linfield. But moving swiftly on that one, yeah, what a result. 8-1 on aggregate in the end. Kjetil Knutsen came out and said, we maintained pressure throughout the game. I've got goosebumps because of the atmosphere. And when the game is over, everyone was standing up. We've had some great experiences together. And that is what builds this Glimt product, he said. So he was really praiseworthy of the fans as well, actually. He said, Glimt is getting better and better, and so are the supporters. I think the atmosphere is getting better from week to week. So maybe that's a bit of a precursor to Berisha's comments about the atmospheres in Norway. I don't know what's going on here, but yeah, massive win. I saw some of the scenes in the changing room afterwards. They really, like you said, it looks like a good atmosphere. And as Kjetil Knutsen said as well, it looks like they're sort of, they're on it again, aren't they?
Yeah, they've got the edge again. They've got the eye of the tiger again. Exactly.
And just to wrap up what he's kind of said, I mean, I think they've signed a few new players as well, haven't they, Glimt? Which we can talk about either now or next week. I'm not sure, but yeah, he just kind of they're looking ahead now because they've got games coming up, and he says that they kind of pinch themselves at these games and the environment and the European matches to come. And he said it's really important for us to develop this team further. So it sounds to me like, they didn't have a best of end to their last season, did they, in Europe, with the Roma game and all the sort of nastiness around that game. It just seems like they got a little bit of their magic back, maybe, and excitement about Europe again. They're playing Zalgiris, of course, who knocked out Malmö. It's a big shame we wouldn't get the Glimt Malmö game that we would have liked. But how do you see them progressing from here in Europe?
For the first time, I'm actually starting to think there's maybe a chance that Bodø Glimt could make the group stage of the Champions League. And the last episode, I was kind of questioning them, wasn't I? That I didn't see that happening. But things seem to have things can change very quickly in football. And also, let's be honest, it's done them a massive favour by Malmö getting knocked out. And now I know you've been down on Malmö all year, but Malmö would have been the favourites over 2 legs against Bodø Glimt, I think, slightly anyway, if not a bit more. But I looked at the expected goals from Malmö against Zalgiris, And over the two legs, Zalgiris dominated 3.13 versus 1.27. Now, obviously, Malmö have not been playing very well in those matches, but I don't know anything about Zalgiris. Now, I'm starting to wonder, are these guys complete mugs, or are they actually going to be some sort of stubborn opposition? I mean, Buda Glimt are strong favourites to get past Zalgiris, and they should get past them. But I don't think they can underestimate them, looking at those XG stats. But if they were to get through that, they'd have a 1 in 4 chance of facing FC Copenhagen. And that would be a tasty clash, wouldn't it? But also a 1 in 4 chance of potentially Red Star Belgrade. Now, if it was Red Star Belgrade for a chance of getting into the Champions League group stages, I think you'd take that, wouldn't you, really? There were some other potentially really tough matches like Zagreb and I think, was it one of the Swiss teams as well? But there's a realistic chance for Buda Glimt now. There really is. But I just wonder with Zalgiris, that are they complete mugs or not?
Well, I thought they were actually quite decent against Malmö. I know Malmö were poor, but they did have 1 or 2 sort of decent forwards. I thought. I think they mentioned, was it Renan and 1 or 2 others. But if you look at Glimt, they scored 15 goals in their last 3 games. Followed that up with a 2-1 win at Ålesund. The 8-0 against Linfield. Vettelsen, Boniface, Pellegrino, Saltness, Espejord, Pellegrino, Samsted, and Espejord again. They're really flying at the moment, aren't they? Amar Pellegrino came out and said, we can't be too negative about the first leg. We struggle. We know we're not good enough when teams are deep in their own box, but we also get a lot of half chances, and so I don't think it's as bad as people make out. And at the end of the day, it seems like they're kind of quite confident going into this game coming up. So I don't know. I get the feeling that maybe they even though they might not be favourites against Zalgiris, I don't know what the odds are saying, but maybe they might fancy themselves. The one thing that is interesting is that they're guaranteed at minimum a place in the Conference League now. So from here, there's only way up, really, isn't it? And they're guaranteed that sort of 5 games, that revenue that will come in as well, which keeps Glimt kind of growing as a football club, doesn't it, as well, in terms of their coefficient, their ranking in Europe. So it's good times for Glimt either way, no matter what happens, really, isn't it?
Yeah, they're celebrating that they know they're definitely in a group stage. And for them, that is a big achievement again. And why not celebrate that? If they get past Zalgiris, they're guaranteed at least a Europa League group stage, which is worth even more. So it's great development from the club. And like I say, I think for both of these sides, it's a really big game now because the reward is potentially really quite vast. And I'm intrigued to see how Buda Glimt tackle a team that Malmö really struggled to deal with. And I know, like I say, Malmö had difficulties there, but Buda Glimt, by the way, Buda Glimt are 1 to 4 favourites to win the first leg. And I would imagine away from home, there'll be odds on as well. But I've just got a feeling it might not be so easy as people think. But I do certainly back them to prevail over the 2 legs.
Yeah, now looking into the league, we just mentioned there, they got a win. They're now 8 points off Molde with a game in hand. They've got a game in hand as well. So, if they win that game in hand, potentially 5 points. We did discuss, can they win the title? But just as your opinion changed based on what you've seen in the last sort of two games from Glimt? Are they going to kind of maybe pull off some sort of second half of the season incredible comeback?
You can't rule it out.
Manchester United against Newcastle type thing.
You can't rule it out. And I tell you what, this Molde will be starting to think, damn, they're still in the race here. They had a good win against Ålesund at the weekend. They deserve to win by more than a 1-goal margin. There was actually an incredible goal in this game from Ålesund. Christopher Oddmar's back and scored from the halfway line, David Beckham-esque. And actually, the second time that Ålesund have scored a goal from the halfway line in the last 3 seasons, because someone did that against Molde back in the COVID year. It was Simon Nordley. It was an incredible goal. It has to be goal of the season, really, although the goalkeeper, maybe the position was a bit dodgy. But it was a good win for Buda Glimt. And I think now they're just in this mode where they just know they've got to get results. And, they've got to perform both on the domestic front and the European front. I'm certainly not ruling them out of the title at all. But Molde do have an 8-point gap. They played an extra game more, but an 8-point gap is quite healthy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a Beckham saw Sullivan off his line for anyone who might remember that famous commentary. Absolutely unbelievable goal from Odin Marks back. And Victor Boniface scored twice in this game, and I've seen some rumours as well. I think we were tagged in a tweet about him maybe moving to Belgium, was it? What can you tell us about that, and how would that affect Glimt?
Well, they've just signed Lars Jørgen Salvesen from Strom's Godset. He was me in last week's podcast saying that Mulder wanted him. But Buda Glimt hijacked this deal, and Lars Jørgen Salvesen has opted for Buda Glimt instead. Big target man striker who's quite good technically, and I think he gives them a bit of a physical strength up there, which they might need at times. It's a bit of a backup plan for Boniface, who has been linked with a move away from the club. I don't think it would be the right time for him to leave. I think it would do him good to stay, actually, at Buda Glimt until the end of the season. I think he's still a bit too raw, be a bit too soon. But if a good offer comes in, you can't knock him. Knock that, can you? You take the money and run if it's a really good offer, especially they've already got in a replacement as such.
Yeah, they've also signed Nino Zugelj from Maribor. I think it's a Slovenian player. I'm not entirely sure what position he plays, but he's 22 years old. So it looks like Glimt are making moves, and it's going to be, well, either way, it's going to be a fascinating end to the title race, isn't it, with only sort of 13, 14 games to go. Let's move on. We do have some questions, Steve. And always very popular with the questions. And I'm going to ask you one of them right now. So I think next on our agenda was always going to be the Sarpsborg-Lillestrøm game in general anyway. But just to sort of kick you off on that, I'm going to say a question from Chris Hilliam, who's obviously been on the podcast before, at Footy and Ali Chris, a big supporter of the podcast. Hope you're well, Chris. And looking forward to the season with Leeds. He said, what's happened to Sarpsborg last few games? Is it a case of the press doesn't work? If the press doesn't work, they are completely vulnerable. They've lost 2-0 against Lillestrøm. There's some red cards in this game and an injury. Steve, tell us exactly first what happened, and then maybe if you want to take Chris's question.
Yeah, this was a wild game. There was a few wild games, actually. There were so many chances in this match that anyone who was betting on the goals and that would have been tearing their hair out, because actually, I think Sarpsborg won the XG battle in this game, if I remember correctly, having a look, or nearly did. 2 versus 2.47, but there was a penalty for Lillestrøm in this game. There was the first half, Sarpsborg should be ahead. They should have got 2 or 3 goals. And then right on the stroke of half time, there was a second yellow card to Jürgen Horn, who was a last man challenge. It could have been a red automatically, really. And he walked for that. It was still quite an even game. Lillestrøm missed some chances. And then Lillestrøm were given a very, very soft penalty, 75th minute, I think it was. For me, this wasn't a penalty. And Anton Salatros was so furious about this, he was booked for dissent. And then he just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then the referee in the end said, right, I've had enough for you, and you're getting a second yellow straight away. So we got 2 yellow cards in the space of like 10 seconds. And he was sent to the showers early as well. So Paul-Andre Helland, I don't know why that this guy always seems to be involved when there's like controversy. He had to take the penalty, didn't he? Scored it, and then Frid Johnson got a second goal. Akor Adams did pick up a bad injury though for Lillestrøm in this game. Could be ruled out for up to 8 weeks with a shoulder problem, so that's bad news for them. Going back to Chris's question about Sarpsborg, I think he's right. They're a mad team to watch. They're absolutely wild, but it's like there's no plan B with Sarpsborg at all. And if they don't get on top of a team, then they are in huge trouble, because I would fancy getting chances against this defense, Jonathan. They just leave themselves wide open at times. They take a lot of risks with getting the ball out from the back, and their form is actually worrying. They've lost something like 8 of their last 10 in the league. It's pretty wild, or certainly 8 of their last 11 anyway, and including also got knocked out in the Norwegian Cup by Moss F. Core, who were formerly managed by Sean Constable. So they're definitely a team that they can beat anyone on the day, but they can also lose to anyone on their day. And it's like Chris said, they've only got one tactical style, no plan B. If it doesn't work and teams work them out straight away, then they're in huge trouble. And I don't know whether I'm getting a little bit worried about them, but I mean, just look at their losses, and I think it's understandable to be concerned.
I mean, I'm going to come back with this question on Sarpsborg in a minute, but just looking at Lillestrøm, that could be a blow for them. Adams, you wrote about him on White Scout, on one of our most recent White Scout blogs. They're 3 points behind Molde with a game in hand. They're well in the title race at this moment in time. They also beat SJK 5-2, which we haven't talked about yet. And they will go through now, and they're playing Royal Antwerp. That's a big game on Thursday. How big an injury is that for them, and how are they going to sort of mitigate that? And then the other question in terms of Salzburg, can you just explain a little bit about the press? Like, what are they trying to do? Because Chris has mentioned there that if the press doesn't work, so what are Salzburg trying to do with the press, in the first place, and why are they so vulnerable if it doesn't come off?
We'll start with the Salzburg because it's fresh in my mind. What they're trying to do is they are taking risks to get the ball high up the field, and they're also taking a lot of risks when they're on the ball themselves. But the thing is, if they don't get the ball, their positioning is so poor and wide open that there's so many gaps and spaces for the opposition to exploit. It's as
because
simple
they're so high up the pitch.
Yeah, it's as simple as that, really.
The defenders, you mean?
Yeah,
Wow,
it's fairly basic, really. It's not like that intricate or anything. Now, when it works, it works really well. But I think they're playing at such a fast-paced tempo as well. Maybe it's already starting to catch up with them, Jonathan. I don't know, because they've also made a lot of mistakes. It might be that the manager's almost asking too much of them. Perhaps I don't know. Remember, this is a team that came from a completely different system last year. But it's one of those. It's when it's good, it's really, really good. And when it's bad, it's fucking awful, to be brutally honest with you. But yeah, and back to Lillis for me, I think it's a massive injury for Akor Adams. I think it's an injury which, if he is out for that long, I think it will cost them a potential chance at the title, and I think it will cost them any chance of making it through to the Conference League group stages. I think that's how bad an injury it is. They've got Holmbert Frid Johnson, who's a ready-made replacement, and he's good at bullying and beating up crap teams, but he doesn't have the X factor that Adams has. Adams can make something happen out of nothing. He's just got that something special about him. Frid Johnson will do a serviceable job, don't get me wrong, but I think that's a really devastating injury. And it's just the timing of it. It comes at such a crucial stage of the season, Jonathan.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Billborn at Hammsrby was similar in terms of just like high intensity, go all out for it. So it's just interesting to get your point of view from a tactical point of view. Of course, David Salini interview as well. A lot of tactics were discussed in that pod. So just if you do want more tactics on the show, tweet us, let us know. Well, maybe there's a few guests you want us to get on the show and talk about that kind of stuff, because it is fascinating at times. Steve, I have to make one little public service announcement before we continue. Conference League this week, we've got AIK are playing, Lillestrøm are playing as well. We've got Molde playing, a few other teams, Viking are playing, which we'll come on to in a second. But there's another team playing called Rakov Częstochowa, which I mentioned in part 1. And I made a big mistake, Steve, because I said they are from Czech Republic, and they're actually from Poland. So apologies for that, and congratulations on your newest signing from Sweden. But yeah, I didn't know too much about their club before that. But yeah, if anyone's listening and is deeply wounded by me getting the country wrong there, then apologies. Steve, we've got to talk about Viking now, and this big Sligo Rovers game. Now, you're going to talk about Sligo. You're going to talk about Viking, because they've somehow managed to knock out Sparta Prague. I can't believe it in some ways. And then I'm going to talk about Sligo Rovers a little bit, because don't ask me why, but I've watched this Sligo Rovers game against Motherwell. So I'll always remember, Steve, one of our earliest ever episodes. I think it was our second episode or third ever, Bedtime for Ballymena, when loads of Ballymena fans were coming over to Norway, and there was a hashtag Bed for Ballymena, sharing beds and stuff. And this Sligo game gives me those sort of same vibes, because Sligo Rovers fans all over Twitter are really buzzing for this game after knocking out Motherwell. They've never been this far in Europe before, Sligo Rovers. A small team, well, not necessarily small, but, a small team in terms of the European competitions, punching above their weight. They're coming to Viking. But let's start with that win against Sparta Prague. What an achievement that was.
Yeah, I listened back to the episode when we first talked about this draw, and I said Viking have absolutely no chance of going through, didn't I? I'm almost trying to find an excuse for myself, but I still don't know how they did manage to make it through, Jonathan, because they faced 50 shots over 2 legs and only conceded 1 goal. Like, it was unbelievable. I mean, I think Sparta are not quite as sharp as they would like to be, obviously, but I actually think they're quite a good team, Sparta Prague. They look like they've got some decent players, and I feel like it's like a 1 in 20 chance that Viking have gone through here. They managed to hold on to a 0-0 draw away, and then they actually fell behind in the second leg at home. But Vervatner scored a fantastic 25-yard equaliser, and then right at the end, the goalkeeper of Sparta Prague made a howler, along with his defender. And in injury time, Maya Traore got the winner amid incredible celebrations and what should have been Sparta Prague against Motherwell. I mean, Sparta Prague must have seen this draw and think, wow, we're going to cruise to the final qualifying round here. We'll beat Viking, we'll beat Motherwell. And they're knocked out. So, I mean, it's incredible that we've got this. We've ended up with Viking against Sligo Rovers for a place, and the winner goes through to the final qualifying round.
Yeah, 50. You've got 50 Shades of Grey, but I think they might have to rename it 50 Shots of Sparta, because that's pretty crazy. to 50 efforts, 50 efforts on goal and not come through. But massive congrats to Viking, because like you say, I mean, the odds, the chart. I mean, Sparta Prague are a big club, aren't they, in terms of European football? You'd expect them to do better than that, I guess. But Viking have knocked them out 2-1 on aggregate. Let's talk a little bit about Sligo Rovers, because they're not the biggest of teams, as we've said, but I think they might give Viking a good game here, Steve. Now, I want to ask you, for any Sligo Rovers fans listening to this podcast, what can you expect from Viking? What are they going to get? Because just to sum up the Motherwell game, second leg I saw, and they actually dispatched them, to be fair. They were probably the better team, and which you might not expect, considering Irish football against Scottish football. Maybe a bit of a surprise there. I felt like Sligo were a sort of team who very much had an emphasis on defending, but they got a good solid 2-0 win at home. Now, they do have one or two decent players, which we'll come on to in a minute, but the tactic, I think, from Sligo was very much kind of rough up Motherwell. This is in the home leg. Rough them up, don't let them have any their way in any areas. They were very physical. They scored a brilliant goal, the centre-back, Blaney, from distance on his left foot, absolutely cracked it in early, and then they got a late breakaway goal late on from Max Mata, who's maybe someone to look out for as well. And I think Motherwell just didn't really have any answers for them, Steve. They were very sort of one-paced. What can Sligo Rovers fans maybe expect from Viking? Because I think the Sligo might approach this as a sort of like low block and let's see what we can get, and then maybe try and hit them on, maybe not on the counter, but maybe just kind of rough them up. So how would Viking respond to that, and could they deal with that?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear that you watched the whole second leg there. Which Sligo Rovers player were you scouting, Jonathan? Because I don't think anyone at Motherwell would be good enough to fit into your model, would they? But I'm joking. But no, I tell you what, I think I do agree with you here. I think it's going to be quite a difficult tie for Viking. I think both sides are going to be on a massive high, obviously. But I tell you what, I don't think Viking will underestimate Sligo Rovers, and I certainly don't. One thing about Irish sides, Northern Irish teams, they like to defend, and in a lot of instances they know how to defend. I remember Dundalk in Europe managed to make the group stage with Molde once, and they will make life very difficult for their opponents. And I think they'll come, in terms of Vikings' approach, I think they'll be mindful that they need to take a lead to Ireland, because they don't want to be going there having to get a result like Motherwell did. So I think Viking will try and control the game. And I don't think they'll be looking to like rack up the score or anything if they get ahead. I think they would take, if you offer Viking 1-0 or 2-0 now, I think they'd take it. And I think Viking, at the moment, obviously they've lost Berisha. They've had a few attacking issues. I think they're going to maybe lack a little bit of firepower right now, and they're going to rely themselves on a bit of defence and to control the game and hopefully get themselves a goal through sheer pressure or a set piece or something. And I think something like the under is very much in play in this game. I think it'll be a cagey affair, first leg. I think Viking should, at home, win it. It's a good support base, and it might make a big difference. But I could see it being a bit of a cagey game, a close one, that the home side edge in the first leg, and then probably might just be able to protect it in Ireland, hopefully, from a Norwegian point of view.
Yeah, not sure about how it will go. I think it'll be, like you said, it's going to be an open one. Sligo Rovers actually just lost in the cup to Wexford, so that tells you a lot about kind of the level we're looking at here in terms of European football. But I think they rested a lot of players for that match, it seems, from the lineup. It went to extra time as well, by the way, so don't know how that might affect the tie. But like you say, maybe a bit of tiredness, or maybe their main players might have been rested for it and be ready. Tickets are actually sold out for this game. Sligo really excited about it. And in general, I think it's going to be quite an exciting affair. I think there's a lot of excitement about it. They've also been allowed, Sligo, they're going to be allowed to play at their home ground. I think there was comments that the ground grading meant that they might have had to move their stadium somewhere else, which I never like. I always think that within reason, you should be able to play at your stadium as far as you get. I mean, can you imagine if Sligo got all the way to, say, the semi-finals of the Champions League? I always feel like it'd be nice if they could just play in their stadium. It kind of balances things out in a certain extent. But then I do get the safety and kind of maybe wanting bigger attendances. So I can see both sides. But it looks like they're going to be allowed to play at their own stadium, which is going to be good for their fans. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere. They've never been this far in Europe. So we got a little prediction for this game. Do you think Viking will come through? I think from looking at the draw, they could face Villarreal, the winners of this match as well. I think the draw is coming up soon, but they're one of the potential opponents.
I've got a prediction for the first leg. I'm going to go 2-0 to Viking. And I think the second leg might be 1-0 to Sligo Rovers. I think it's going to be close. But of course, I've got to back our Norwegian team on this podcast, haven't I? But I think massively well done to both teams to making it this far that nobody expected. And I hope we get two good games between two very passionate supporters, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the first leg is, of course, in Norway, as you've said, but a lot of travelling fans, a bit like the Ballymena one. But if you're a Sligo Rovers fan, tweet us if you're listening to this. Let us know, your thoughts on Viking. Let us know how the game goes. I hope you enjoy it, and I'm very sure that it will be a very merry festival of football in that game. I think both sets of fans will enjoy it. I think even Viking have tweeted about their excitement about the game. So I think it's going to be played in good spirit.
It will. Yeah,
I think on the pitch it'll be fiercely contested because I think Sligo, they do have a bit about them, and I can expect a few meaty challenges in the game. Other teams that are involved, Djurgården travel to Sepsi, OSK. It's always an education in these pods, isn't it? And that's in Romania. Another team I don't know much about, but I'd have Djurgården as favourites there. As we mentioned, Malmö are playing Dudelange. That's in the Europa League qualifiers at home. So they're from Luxembourg. So yeah, Dudelange, where's my car? Maybe for any Malmö fans who get sort of lost. HJK play Maribor away from home. But yeah, no, it's going to be good. I think there's quite a few interesting ties this week. ARK are playing Skendija as well. I think that Lillestrøm Antwerp game is a big one.
Royal Antwerp. Why are they called Royal Antwerp?
I know they used to be a feeder club of Manchester United. I don't know the ins and outs of their club history, but yeah, I think that. I mean, in terms of level of team, they're a good team.
We need to have a Belgian podcast, don't we? The Belgian football podcast about Royal Antwerp.
Well, they've got a good player called Mitchell Balikwisha up front, so keep an eye out for him, I think, if you're watching that game. But yeah, no, apart from that, Molde playing Kisvada, again, a team from Hungary.
First time they've ever been in Europe.
A lot of games. But let's move on because we'll talk about Europe next week. We do have some more questions before we wrap this show up. Steve, what are your thoughts on the following question that we have from an old friend of the pod, Joe Gould? I've got to give him a shout out. He has asked about Rosenborg and their signings. We're going to talk about their signings, I think, a bit more detail in weeks to come, Joe. But just want to ask you, Steve, just the final part of his question is at 12th Yankee says, do you think that the signings put them in the title race, or is it too soon? Just very one word, one sentence answer. Do you think they're in the title race or not?
No, not this season, but they can get a medal.
Yeah, they are currently fourth, 3 points behind Glimt in third. And this week they have had a win at Odd 3-2. You actually tipped that game on the weekend preview show, I think, didn't you, Steve? Well, you mentioned it anyway. No, maybe you didn't.
I think I did with that one, actually.
Yeah, but we did have a question about Odd as well. So that leads me on to my next question, really.
That was Scooby, I think.
Scooby Man again. What is happening with Odd? What can we expect from them in the near future? We haven't talked about them for a few weeks. They're 10th. What can we expect?
Well, do you know what, Scooby? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know what to expect from them. I do know that the goalkeeper, Leopold Wallstadt, continues to make some great saves. He's actually made the most saves of any goalkeeper in the league this season, 72 saves. So that kind of tells you one thing about Odd, that they do leave themselves open to being shot on. This was another crazy game. odd against Rosenborg. 3-2 win for Rosenborg. There were so many chances. And this could have ended like 5-5. Like, genuinely, I couldn't believe how open it was. And it's interesting that Rosenborg have signed this guy from the Icelandic league that everyone's been talking about. And I'm just trying to find his name now because it's gone off my tongue. It's the guy from the Icelandic league, which I'm going to have to edit this bit out. Bollocks.
No, it's Kasper Tengstedt and Kristall Magni Ingersson.
That's it. Ingersson, the guy from Iceland. He supposedly got a very high ceiling, I saw someone comment on. I've not seen him in action, so I can't comment. I'll have to judge him when he comes into the... Yeah, Kristall Magni Ingersson from Viking Reykjavik. He actually scored against Malmö in the Champions League qualifier in the first leg, and he was suspended for the second leg. But, was he the guy who took his shirt off? He was, wasn't he? And got sent off for that. I remember now. But, yeah, so it sounds like he's a very exciting player. He can play in loads of different positions in attack and midfield. So that's an exciting one to look out for with Rosenborg. I'm sure we'll talk about him again soon. As for Odd, though, I just don't know. I cannot make head or tail of this team at the moment. They're very much living up to their name tag. They look good 1 minute, and then the next minute they look terrible. So, Scooby, I don't know. I wish I could answer this question a bit better, but
It sounds like, let's be fair, Steve, you don't have a Scooby.
I don't have a Scooby. No,
so
I don't know.
Thanks for the question. I did try to give you the out there with the players saying we'll talk about them next week, but you duck straight back into it.
I can't help. I don't help myself
fair
sometimes,
enough.
do I?
But thanks to Joe for the question and at Scooby Man as well. We will talk about them, as I say, in a bit more detail in the weeks to come. I'm sure, Steve, you'll be a lot more prepared for that. But let's move on to another question that we have. Two questions, in fact. One about HamKam and one about Kristiansund. Now, the question we have is from Team Overs at Here for Football. Loyal supporter of the podcast. He says, the fall of Kristiansund, what WTF is going on? He also asked a question about watching Allsvenskan games in the States. So up your game, States. Why haven't you got the rights? What's going on? It's a great league. 4-all draws all over the place. Buy the rights. And then we also have a question. I think it's related, isn't it? Because these two played each other, didn't they, Steve?
Yeah.
At It's Meniko 8. It's Meniko says, simply, why can't HamKam score?
Yeah, and I know they annoyed a lot of people in the betting world on Saturday, including myself, actually, because I was on over 2.5 in that game against Kristiansund. It ended 1-0 to Kristiansund. And to be honest, none of us can really complain because it was a completely deserved undermatch. And there was a very, very low XG for both sides in this fixture. Actually, it was such a tame fixture, 0.55 against 0.71. It was more like a French league dirt game, wasn't it, for expected goals? And I just didn't see this coming because Kristiansund got beaten midweek by Sandefjord. And to be honest, after that loss, I'm thinking they are 110% done. That was their last chance, I felt. And I thought they'd be demoralised. And I thought, to be honest, they would roll over quite easily for HamKam, who had a full week of rest. But I don't know what was going on with HamKam here. They just couldn't seem to... They didn't get going. Kristiansund actually fought really hard, in fairness to them here. They didn't give up. And they were... As soon as they got the lead, they just kind of were like a dog with a bone. And they wouldn't let go of it. And I'm really surprised that it's been such a poor defence this year, Kristiansund. They've conceded so many goals. HamKam they couldn't really lay a glove on them. It was strange. I don't know. I feel like HamKam have gone into their shell a bit too much recently. They've drawn a lot of fixtures. And I always said, in whatever league across the world, in the end, if you draw too many games, it can really bite you on the arse. It just can. You need to get wins. Draws are nice in some ways, but if you get too many of them, it doesn't really do you any favours. And I just feel like they have lacked a few goals in the last few weeks, last couple of months maybe. And like I said, just maybe gone into their shell a little bit too much, understandably at times as well. By the way, we can't expect too much of HamKam because they're recently promoted, and if they just finish one place above the drop zone, it's job done for them. But it was a worrying performance from them against Kristiansund. A lot of people would have expected them to win that match quite easily, I think.
Yeah, and do you want to sort of elaborate a bit on WTF is going on with Kristiansund? Or, I mean, it seems like to me, Steve, the upcoming transfer window is going to be very pivotal, isn't it, in this relegation battle? I get the feeling that, I mean, although Jerv and Kristiansund are kind of looking adrift, between Haugesund, Tromsø, HamKam, Sarpsborg, Odd, Sandefjord, maybe even Ålesund, it still seems like a lot could happen, isn't it, based on how the window goes, who signs who loses who. Do you agree with that? And to answer here for football's question, what WTF is going on with Kristiansund?
Yeah, but I did say in a couple of recent podcasts they were never as bad as a 2-point team or a team that hadn't won a game of football this season, but that was the first time they looked like they could keep a clean sheet, really, and that will do them the world of good. They're not completely dead yet. They're still 11 points adrift of the nearest potential safe position. That's the playoff. So they've got a lot of work to do. Let's be realistic. It's going to be mega hard. Yerv, I think, are going to be. I actually think Yerv will finish bottom. They look really out of their depth right now. But Kristiansund, I mean, what has been going on with them this year? I think I've said it on several other podcasts that just everything seems to have gone wrong for them. They conceded goals at the wrong time when they've got ahead in games. They've last week they were 2-0 up against Odd at half time and then blew it in the second half to draw 2-2. Like I said, I credit to them for actually keeping their heads up against HamKam, because they could have easily just rolled over and given up. But they look like they've got a bit more fight back in, and they've got a massive game in midweek against Tromsø, I think Wednesday night. If they can win that, that gets them up to 8 points, and then I think they can start to think, we've got a chance here if we have a better second half of the season. I don't think they've really got an awful lot in terms of resources to bring players in August. We know that their finances are not great. So I think it's a huge ask for Kristiansund, but it's given them a crumb of comfort. And, in terms of HamKam, they'll be looking over the shoulder a bit now because they're only 2 points off the playoff spot and Tromsø have got 2 games in hand. So, for them, it was not a good outcome.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Kristiansund, they did win. They did get a win. Good finish from Asbak, sort of a cross, and he sort of dipped in at the back post, popped up and got a crucial winner for them because they need points. That's the first win of the season. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely
incredible
ridiculous
to be saying that in July, even August now. But that's a Christopher Asbak huge goal potentially, and maybe could kickstart a revival. So thanks so much. Here for Football Team Overs, we really appreciate your support. I know you're a big supporter of the pod. Kristiansund next have Tromsø and then Molde at home, so they play actually Tromsø twice. So these are the games that really could start to define their season. So we've got 2 more little things you wanted to talk about before we wrap up. I mean, to be fair, Steve, if Kristiansund get 6 points from Tromsø, they're kind of back into it, but that's still a big ask, isn't it? But in terms of Tromsø, that's the first win in 8 games you've mentioned here. You just want to wrap up by talking about Tromsø and Yerv.
Just an interesting stat before I talk about them. 80% of Kristiansund's points this season have come against HamKam because they also got a draw against them earlier in the season. So that's a mad statistic, isn't it? Tromsø
team.
Yeah, absolutely. But they're facing Tromsø twice in fairly quick succession, I think, soon. So Tromsø got a first win in 8 games, 3-0 win against Sandefjord. I think it was just one of them games where 3 games in a week caught up with Sandefjord, to be honest. And they just looked a bit tired and missed a few chances and a bit sloppy. But, I mean, I did say in the pre-season podcast that I didn't think it was going to be a straightforward year for Tromsø, and I still don't think it will be. But for them now, they've really got to make the most of these games in hand. I think a few of them are at home, and they need to kick on. But it was a much better result for them. They've got, for me, a striker problem. They just don't have a natural striker in their squad who is going to finish some chances, because at the moment they're going with August Mikkelsen up front, who for me is not. He's better. He hasn't probably had such a good year finishing as he would have imagined, but he's not what you call a natural striker. Really, they need to look in this window and get a proper number 9, because it's just eluded them for a long time now. If they could get a good number 9, I think they'd be all right, Tromsø. But a much needed result for them, for sure, and it gets them to 16 points. There's a few teams down there. I think talking about Yerv now, they look completely out of their depth. Like, they're getting battered each week in terms of XG terms. They're just not good enough for quality, and it'd be surprised to me if they don't finish bottom of the table, and they'll end up being. They might get themselves to like 20 points or something, or even like 2022. But I just don't see them surviving. John, I think it would really take a big turnaround for them now. Yeah,
and they've had a big loss at the weekend, as you've mentioned just there. They're still, well, they're second from bottom, but they're still only 5 points off it. But yeah, like you say, 4 defeats in a row now, 10 goals conceded in their last 2 games. It's not looking great for Yerv. Vålerenga, decent win for them.
Yeah, there was a question about
But
Vålerenga, I think.
From who?
Luis again, Luis de Almeida. But,
I've missed this question. I don't see the tweet.
Yeah, he asked, Vålerenga is coming off 4 solid wins in a row and showing much better football. Did Dogale Fagomo decide to shake things up, or was it just because they've got a nice run of fixtures? And I think I kind of touched on this on the last episode that I didn't believe he could get a tune out of this squad much more, but I don't think he's changed a lot tactically. I think something has been said in-house, Jonathan, basically to shake up the players. And yeah, you can't question his man management and motivation after that, can you, really? They've been a bit more positive on the field, and of course it has helped they've faced some poorer teams, but this is as good a football I've seen Vålerenga play in 2 or 3 years. Like, genuinely, they actually look good to watch. They're on the front foot, they're playing nice football, and if this continues, they could be, and they sign well in August, they could be a real nightmare, handful of an opponent for any team, because they do have plenty of quality as well.
Yeah, I've just found it now, and I'll mention somewhere. We had a lot of questions this week, actually, so fair play. Thanks a lot. Tolas Nacion, Ugland, Layuni, Bjordal, Richman, Simze, and Dikko Eng with the goals in that game. Vålerenga are starting to, like you say, turn things around maybe as well. So that's all for this week, I think, unless there's anything else you want to say. But thanks so much for all the questions. We're going to be back to also talk about Denmark soon with Henry, and maybe have a few more interviews as well in the next few weeks. So keep it peeled on the Nordic Football Podcast. You can subscribe on YouTube. Please do, and you can listen to your episodes there or watch them if you like. On Patreon, we have our bonus episodes, weekend preview shows, and also player profiles. Good profile from Steve this past week. And we've also had Mahanad Ye's profile on there, video scouting reports. And what else is there? Yeah, that we got on Twitter as well, at Nordic Footpod. You can comment and let us know what you think. Subscribe on Spotify or iTunes and never miss a pod. So thanks a lot. It's going to be interesting in Europe this week, and we will recap everything next week again. So good to be with you, my friend, again. And we shall chat soon.
You've said everything that needs saying there, Jonathan. So all I need to say now is goodbye and take care, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.